you get to know a song over the years of singing it. So I've been singing these songs for 30 years, some of them. I know where the bodies are buried.
A rock star revered around the world, selling out arenas night after night, his voice heard on radios from London to Los Angeles. He had the fortune, talent, family, and lifestyle that most people can only dream of. To the outer world, he appeared untouchable, a shining example of music and personality. But celebrity has a way of concealing darkness. Behind the glossy covers and glittering platforms lay a personal existence far more delicate than anyone imagined. And all it would take is one decision, one act of passion, to shatter that ideal image. What began as a spark of attraction developed into an uncontrollable inferno, consuming friendships, destroying the image of a happy marriage, and making even his most devoted admirers rethink everything they thought they knew about him. The headlines would describe it as betrayal. Some could call it destiny, but for Sting, it was the narrative of how a single affair permanently altered the trajectory of his life. So how could one of the world's most famous musicians sacrifice everything, his wife, his career, and the trust of those closest to him, for a love that began in secret? And who was the woman in the middle of it all? This was the affair that terminated Sting's marriage. Sting was not born famous or reared in a privileged environment. Gordon Sumner was born in Wallsend, England, an industrial town known for shipyards, working-class grit, and humble living that never promised luxury. His father delivered milk, his mother groomed hair, and their home represented the everyday rhythms of small-town life. But even as a child, Gordon believed he was meant for something bigger. His escape was through music. Jazz and classical music played on his family's record player whisked him away from the dreary streets of his village. At the age of 16, fate handed him a beat-up guitar left by a family acquaintance. That one instrument became his passport to another universe. Nights spent strumming chords and writing songs eventually led him to modest bar stages, where locals received their first taste of the raw voice and captivating charisma that would characterize him. The nickname Sting came before the celebrity. He wore a black and yellow striped jumper that resembled a wasp when performing with the Phoenix Jazzmen. The band leader chuckled and nicknamed him Sting, and the name stayed. Short, sharp, and perfectly suited to the celebrity he was about to become. After graduating from Northern Counties College of Education, he attempted to find stability by working as a school teacher, but teaching could not compete with the allure of music. By the mid-1970s, Sting had made the leap, going to London, where everything would alter. There he met drummer Stuart Copeland, who, along with guitarist Andy Summers, founded The Police in 1977. The band's sound was electrifying, combining reggae rhythms with punk fury and pop accessibility. Their debut album, Outlandos d'Amour, released in 1978, featured Roxanne, which was initially disregarded by radio stations, but was quickly recognized as a breakout smash. Sting's voice, which was soft one moment and razor-sharp the next, cemented its spot in the music industry with each album. By 1983, Synchronicity had completed their rise. Every Breath You Take dominated global charts, becoming one of the decade's most played songs. Sting's visage was everywhere, and his voice was unmistakable. He was no longer just the frontman of a band. He was a cultural figure. From the outside, his life appeared unassailable. Even while the fans celebrated, fractures were growing in his personal life, cracks that fame and fortune could not hide forever. Before becoming an international sensation, Sting's life was grounded by Frances Tomelty, his first wife. Their paths crossed in 1974 on a theater stage, away from the raucous crowds attending rock concerts. Sting appeared in Rock Nativity, a modern version of the biblical story, with Frances, an outstanding Irish actress from a prestigious theatrical family, as the Virgin Mary. What started as a cooperation rapidly grew into something more. Frances was no average partner. She was the daughter of renowned actor and playwright Joseph Tomelty, and she had grown up in an artistic and performing environment. On stage, she was noted for her intensity and ability to blend into a character with quiet confidence. Offstage, she offered the same stability to her relationship with Sting, Her presence was reassuring for a young musician still figuring things out. In 1976, they were married. The couple moved into a modest property in Bayswater, London. Fame had not yet arrived, and their early years together were distinguished by limited resources, little engagements, and shared ambitions. That same year, they welcomed their first child, Joe, and Sting became a parent at the same time his career was taking off. Frances balanced her own work with raising their son, eventually landing respected roles in television and theater shows. She never lived in Sting's shadow. She had her own personality and reputation as an accomplished actor. However, she also played an important role in her husband's ascent, providing discipline when he lacked it and belief when self-doubt set in. Frances was present when the police rose. She put up with the long rehearsals, late nights, and uncertainty that comes with being an artist. When success eventually arrived, it appeared that her trust had been justified. Their second child, Fuchsia Catherine, was born in 1982, at a time when Sting's celebrity had reached worldwide proportions. However, success typically has a hidden cost. The tours grew longer, the hotel rooms more frequent, and the strain on their marriage became apparent. While Frances cared for their children in London, Sting led a life of perpetual mobility. The distance between them was more than simply physical, it was emotional. What had begun as a partnership of equals was gradually bending under the weight of fame. And in the close-knit social world of actors and artists, where friendships merged with professional ties, the gaps in their marriage would quickly deepen into something neither could ignore. Fame has a way of accentuating everything: the highs, the demands, and, most importantly, the distance between individuals. Sting and Frances Tomelty's rise from humble origins to global fame occurred almost overnight. By the early 1980s, the Police had become one of the world's most successful bands. That kind of success required unrelenting touring schedules, media duties, and months away from home. While Sting was dealing with hotel rooms, shouting fans, and the excitement of sold-out stadiums, Frances was in London running the household and raising their two children. She continued to work as an actress, juggling scripts and rehearsals alongside maternal responsibilities. However, the difference between their reality simply widened. Sting lived in a milieu driven by continual attention, creative friction, and the allure of notoriety. Frances lived in a world characterized by security, routine, and the calm needs of family life. They were initially successful in bridging the gap. Frances attended at premieres and public events, projecting a sense of oneness to the outer world. But behind closed doors, the emotional strain was more difficult to conceal. Whispers of strain began to float within their social groups, and those who knew them well noticed that something was changing. The British entertainment industry at the time was a small, interwoven world. Musicians, actors, and producers congregated in overlapping circles where friendships and professional ties merged. It was a world where everyone knew each other, and secrets were rarely kept hidden for long. The weight of fame not only put Sting and Frances's marriage to the test, but also revealed its flaws, and those fractures will soon expand into something far more deadly. Sting exuded confidence on stage. His smart suits, powerful voice, and presence in the spotlight suggested a guy who had conquered both his craft and his life. However, away from the stage, the truth was far more convoluted. Sting didn't always see success as a blessing. It included battles that most fans have never seen. Throughout his time with the Police, Sting discreetly battled melancholy and what he subsequently described as bipolar fluctuations. Even during the height of the band's fame, when everyone expected him to be happy, he often felt distant and heavy. He confessed in interviews that his moods might fluctuate significantly, leaving him feeling chemically unstable and solitary while being surrounded by thousands of fans every night. The continual touring simply added to the burden, moving from city to city, staying in hotel rooms, and performing on adrenaline left little room for a balanced personal life. Sting later described the cycle as euphoric on stage, but hollow once the clapping subsided. Music became his therapy, allowing him to express emotions that he couldn't otherwise. Songs like King of Pain were more than just successes. They reflected the loneliness and sadness he bore. After his father died, he poured his emotions into The Soul Cages, a highly intimate album that highlighted how much sadness and internal strife he was dealing with. Aside from music, he looked for other ways to keep himself stable, turning to Ashtanga yoga and a strict macrobiotic diet as instruments for discipline and balance. Despite these activities, Sting remained a guy in search of stability, and it was against this backdrop of internal conflict and external pressures that the controversy that would characterize his private life began to develop. The controversy that would forever change Sting's personal life began not with a stranger, but with someone already sewn into the fabric of his family. Trudy Styler was more than just another actor in the British entertainment industry. She was Francis Tomelty's personal friend and neighbor. Their homes in Bayswater were only a short walk away, and their lives frequently overlapped as they would in any close-knit community. Francis and Trudy shared confidence, spent time together, and supported one another as women pursuing careers in a tough business. It was within this seemingly protected environment that boundaries began to blur. Sting initially observed Trudy in 1977, the same year the Police were founded. She was young, sharp-witted, and ambitious, and while she was initially just part of the larger social group around Francis, Sting later admitted it was love at first sight. He described her as someone who possessed both strength and vulnerability, qualities that drew him in immediately, even if he tried to ignore them at the time. As the Police's popularity skyrocketed in the early 1980s, Sting's marriage was already fraying. Long tours kept him away for months, while Francis handled the obligations of raising their children. In that void, his relationship with Trudy began to strengthen. What began as casual encounters quickly developed into a romance that neither of them could deny. Both Sting and Trudy would subsequently concede that the circumstances were far from ideal. Trudy once described it as the least ideal scenario, betraying a dear friend and embarking on a guilt-ridden romance. Sting himself admitted that their attraction was undeniable and that even understanding the consequences, he couldn't resist. In 1983, confidentiality was no longer possible. Trudy became pregnant with Sting's child, turning what had been whispers into undeniable facts. The storm that erupted was not solely about infidelity. It was about treachery between friends, with a rock star's wife leaving for the lady who had formerly been her confidant. When Trudy gave birth to their daughter Mickey in 1984, the story couldn't be stopped. The tabloids grabbed on it instantly, portraying Sting as irresponsible and arrogant, the rock god who believed he could take whatever or anybody he wanted. What could have been a private heartbreak had become a very public show. And for Sting, the affair was more than just a personal preference. It was a storm that would devastate his wife, friendships, and carefully crafted public image. By 1984, the private cracks in Sting's marriage to Frances Tomelty had exploded wide open. What had formerly been whispered amongst friends was now splattered across tabloids. The transgression was more than simply a spouse straying. It was a rock star leaving his wife for her best friend. The press found it enticing. It was terrible for people within their social circle. The divorce was swift and concluded the same year. For Francis, it signaled the end of a marriage built on love, teamwork, and shared dreams. She had stood by his side long before he became famous, believed in him when few others did, and raised 2 children with him. Now that chapter has been ended in the most public and unpleasant way possible. Francis never remarried, preferring to pursue her acting career with quiet dignity while keeping her personal life out of the spotlight. For Sting, the fallout was complicated. He and Trudy Styler escaped to Jamaica, assuming that the distance would keep them safe from the constant media onslaught. It wasn't just an escape, it was a sanctuary where Sting could contemplate the devastation of his previous life. Nonetheless, the burden of guilt and controversy followed him. It was around this time that he wrote King of Pain, a song of more than just artistic significance. It reflected the anguish he was experiencing, including regret, grief, and the shaky beginnings of a new love. The controversy also changed his friendships. Some colleagues and friends distanced themselves, refusing to forgive what they perceived as a serious betrayal. Others remained, but the atmosphere was never the same. The tightly knit artistic circles of London now had fault lines that could not be repaired. Sting's music remained popular, but his personal image was tarnished. The rock god, who had once looked untouchable, was now portrayed as greedy, reckless, and even cruel. The glare of public judgment was a penalty that would linger for years for a guy who was already dealing with internal conflicts. Despite the controversial beginning, Sting and Trudy Styler's romance persevered. After years of scrutinizing and rebuilding, the couple married in 1992 on their Wiltshire estate, cementing a relationship that had already produced 2 children, Mickey and Jake. In the years that followed, their family expanded with the arrival of Elliot and Jacko, resulting in a blended household that included Sting's children from his marriage to Frances. Sting and Trudy created a life that exemplified both success and meaning. Their Tuscan estate evolved from a refuge into a working vineyard and organic farm that produces wine and olive oil. Trudy prospered as a filmmaker and humanitarian, eventually becoming a UNICEF ambassador and utilizing her platform to campaign for children's rights and environmental issues. Sting continued to record, perform, and support international charities, frequently collaborating with Trudy to organize benefit concerts and fundraisers. Over time, the story evolved. The controversy that once defined them gave way to an image of stability, collaboration, and a common vision. Sting frequently attributes their long-lasting relationship to friendship rather than passion, saying, "Be married to your best friend." For a couple that began in scandal, their decades together were a monument to persistence. The narrative of Sting's first marriage is one of love, betrayal, and reinvention. Frances Tomalty was present in the early years, providing stability and hope before celebrity took hold. However, the pressures of fame and the pull of desire drove Sting down a path that broke not just his marriage, but also a friendship. For years, the scandal trailed him like a shadow, influencing how the public perceived him. Despite the tumult, a bond has emerged that has lasted more than 3 decades. Sting and Trudy Styler transformed a contentious start into a long-lasting marriage, raising 4 children together and creating a life filled with creativity, philanthropy, and family. But the issue remains. Was this a betrayal or fate taking its course? Please share your ideas in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this narrative, remember to like, subscribe, and watch the next video on your screen.